Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Coffee and Contemplation brought to you by Spotlight Recovery. It is April 30th. We've got a neat reflection today on the topic of Am I Addicted to Crisis? What is that all about? The concept of living in chaos and thriving in chaos as addicts. There's some interesting points out of this that I want to talk to you about and just educate you on. So let's get into it. Addicted to crisis. It's sometimes a surprise to learn that we mismanage our affairs even in sobriety. We may even find that we seem to be addicted to problem situations. It takes a crisis, it seems, to give us the energy and purpose we need to get things done. One common form of this strange addiction is procrastination. Some of us have a tendency to put off important tasks until the very last moment and then work overtime to get the job done. Is this laziness? Maybe it is, to some extent. Maybe, however, we need an impending emergency to get motivated and energized to do what needs to be done. Maybe we're addicted to crisis. If so, this may be another disease that can be arrested but not cured. We arrest it by slowly adopting better work habits and paying closer attention to schedules and deadlines. Working with greater efficiency, we'll have more time and energy for the things that really matter. Today, I don't need a crisis to take charge of my life and do what needs to be done. I'll tackle at least one thing I've been putting off and either complete the task or get a good start on it. This reflection is from Walk in Dry Places. So this is cool, and I like this one because this is a very important lesson to learn and thing to understand about us and how our brains work. We're going to get into a little brain chemistry here, okay? A little like neuroscience 101, or I guess maybe this will be like 2.0 neuroscience. But it's important to cover and to know and to understand because a lot of addicts do this and relate to this, and there is a chemical reason for it, okay? And so what that is, and ultimately what they're talking about here, is dopamine. Now, dopamine's become like a tag word in addiction, and people talk about it. Oh yeah, dopamine, got to get that dopamine hit and all that stuff. And it's actually it's become misused, and what it is and how it works is actually that messaging through the grapevine has actually become inaccurate. So here's the difference. Dopamine is not the primary chemical for reward. It is the primary chemical for motivation. So that's an important thing to know and have a different distinction in, because people are always like, oh, I need that dopamine hit. Well, that's not really a thing. You don't get a dopamine hit. So you can get a surge or a rush, an influx of dopamine, and this happens when you are motivated to do something. Okay, so first, to start off with this, is being able to separate these two and understand that difference. Dopamine is not giving you the reward. Dopamine is giving you the motivation to then achieve a reward. So there's the first distinction. So that's an important thing to notice as well. So there's number one, okay? So then with that, where we go from this, like in the first paragraph, they basically describe why this is so important and how our brains work with this, right? Where are the lines here? We seem to be addicted to problem situations. It takes a crisis to give us the energy and purpose we need to get things done. So, in other words, now that we are not taking drugs, we need some other huge motivator, something to then get that kick of dopamine to give us the motivational energy to then do whatever we need to do. Okay, so in addiction, we're addicted to whatever the substance, whatever the behavior may be. So the motivation is to get that fix, right? Then the reward is getting it. So that's the other part too, with the dopamine confusion. Okay, so we need high amounts of this motivation to then achieve the reward that we are aiming for. Now, and also too, over time, as we are addicts and act in this behavior and are on this chase, the chasing the dragon that people talk about, we keep needing more and more or high amounts of dopamine that are released into our brain to then therefore go and chase this reward. Much higher than your normal everyday releases to get things done. And we live in this peak and valley, spike and crash space for however long our addiction lasts, right? So for a lot of us, if that's then years and you then come into recovery, your brain needs to level out. It needs to level out and it needs to return to a normal baseline of release of these chemicals, right? And that's just going to take time. That takes a while, depending on if the addiction was substance or behavioral, and then if it's substance, what the substance was, how much of it did you use for how long, for each individual use, plus the use, how long for a period of time, like how many years were you using this substance. So there's a lot of factors. It gets complicated. Nobody's going to be able to quickly and easily tell you this is how long it's going to take for your brain chemistry to maybe not rewire, but just for your brain to level out and get back to releasing these normal amounts of chemicals, right? I was trying to think of the word because it's not a neurodopamine. No, it's not a neurotransmitter. It is a neuromodulator. There we go. Anyway, there's me nerding out, listening to tons of Andrew Huberman lately. So anyway, so there's these important factors. So you come into recovery, and especially if you're early in recovery, is when your brain is now having this lacking of these big dopamine spikes. Because when your life is so focused on an addiction, nothing else is remotely as motivating as that addiction. There is no reward greater than feeding my addiction. So you're in early recovery, your brain is still operating in this space of no reward is as great. So, hey, let's go to the movies. Well, that's not as good as my addiction. So therefore, I'm going to have little to no dopamine release like nothing will motivate me to go do that as nearly as much. So that's why all your basic everyday things in early recovery are bleh, bleh, because you're literally not getting the fuel from your brain to say, hey, let's go do that. And for the great example from this reflection, until the crisis happens, right? Then something else, then the reward in this sense could be problem solve, solving the crisis, getting out of crisis. Well, now we're getting that rush of dopamine, which is the motivator to then get these things done. Okay, so that's why your brain functions like this. That's why it may take a bit, and those early days in recovery, things aren't going to be as exciting and motivating. And that's why all addicts can relate to this, because our brains are just, this is how they work. This is how they're wired. At least this is our current today understanding of it in 2024. So this is what we know. That's why your brain does these things. So there you go. So I hope that makes some sense and can explain just why your brain's operating the way that it is, and why it can be so hard to find that motivation to get up and do stuff. So there you go. So know that. So give yourself a break. Don't be so hard on yourself. Don't beat yourself up. This is no moral failing of you. You are not lazy, like it talks about in the reflection. Like based on these behaviors, that doesn't prove laziness. That's just how your brain's going to work for a little while. Okay? So there's that piece. So knowing this, just be kind and gentle and loving to yourself. Try to develop some patience and find things you can do to spend the time and fill the days to essentially ride this out. And just understand that, yeah, things just aren't going to excite you and get you as motivated as they used to, or as much as they did to feed your addiction. It's just going to take a while for all that to level out. Okay, but for a lot of us, it can and it should. If you're going for months and months at a time and nothing is changing, then that may be worth speaking to your doctor, psychiatrist, somebody like that. Because depending on the drug use, we absolutely can cause damage. So don't freak out about that right away. Give yourself that time. But if there's a long period of time you're getting frustrated about it, go see some more professional medical help over this stuff just to get a better understanding. Okay? So there is that whole piece. That's how all of that works. That's why I wanted to just jump, or when I saw this reflection, I just wanted to jump on this right away because it's a really important thing for a lot of us to know and understand in addiction. The other thing with this too that's also really important is, from my experience, this is one of the main reasons why people relapse. Why people relapse, especially when you're early on, and they talk about like those early first days, weeks, whatever it may be, you're a lot more vulnerable because that's when you're having the biggest initial adjustment of dopamine release in your brain. So if you, I don't know, I'm just going to use crack as an example because it's one of the hardest addictions to kick because the chemical spike in it is so strong and then crashes so fast. So that reward is so powerful and comes on so quickly. So when people come off it and you're in your first day, couple days of recovery, your brain is having such a massive adjustment from having all of this dopamine release to get motivated to get the next fix, or the motivation is to avoid withdrawal effects, which is why you keep using. That's actually a really big one too. Anyway, so yeah, regardless of these two, your brain is going through this massive adjustment from coming off of such a strong stimulant and having this massive peak and then huge crash like 15 minutes later. So your brain, so its dopamine release and your motivation to do anything else is going to be all over the place or non-existent. And the only motivation that's going to keep coming back naturally is the motivation to get out of these feelings of withdrawal. Therefore, what else works? Use again. So that's why this is so important to understand on how it contributes to relapse, and why in these early days to know that this is what's happening in your brain, just so it can make sense, because these emotions, these feelings are having this total flat line in your brain of no motivation to do anything else can be alarming, scary if you don't understand it, but you know your brain's not working properly or the way you want it to, then it easily then can cause that panic. We can be freaking out about it. So then in this case, crisis, sure. But again, the main motivator here is going to be either getting out of these withdrawal effects, so I know to use, or then have all these feelings of hopelessness, of thinking, oh my God, my brain's broken, I'm done, this is how my life's always going to be, I really screwed myself up with drugs, so fuck it, I'm just going to go back to doing more drugs. When you really don't have to. You just need to understand that this is what's going on in your brain, which is why it's going to be hard in those early days. Okay? So 2 really important points here that I wanted to cover with you, just so you know, because it makes such a difference. People say knowing is half the battle. I'd say at least half. If not, I get at least 51% in my world. And then this can give you some solace and some understanding of what's going on or what went on, how our brain works the way it does. Okay, so there's all of that stuff. I'm going to take a quick other skim here again to see if there's anything else I want to comment on with this reflection, because that was really the main lesson I wanted to share with you. Okay, so let me take a look here. Yeah, what we're just talking about applies with, so in the second paragraph here, a common form of this is procrastination. But so again, we have no motivator coming out of like kicking in our brain to motivate us to do the thing. So then why would we? And then all of a sudden, very last moment, well, motivation is now I need to get this done. So there's that dopamine release. Now I get it done, do it last minute, pull the all-nighter, whatever it is, and then it's done. So again, understanding how dopamine works in our brain, this makes total sense. Okay, I'd argue on the laziness point, In this instance, I'm talking about specifically, absolutely not. Addicts for sure can be lazy. So for you individually, I don't know. That's up for you to know or to ask and talk to some other people about to find that honest answer. But chemically, in this sense, it's not. And so then when it says maybe, however, we need an impending emergency to get motivated and energized to do what needs to be done. Maybe we're addicted to crisis. So like, yes and no. What it talks about in that third paragraph is everything exactly of what I just explained. We need an impending emergency. Emergency. Brain goes, oh shit, then kicks in all the dopamine. So there's your motivator to then do whatever you need to do. So now the difference here, I would say, maybe we're addicted to crisis. And this is something for you to be aware of, like be mindful of and check in and look at with yourself and your behaviors on this. Are you getting some sort of kick out of this? Right? Are you getting a reward out of this? And then that's something that you can look at to help determine, am I actually getting addicted to crisis and more of this chaos space? Or is it just crisis is the only thing that's giving me enough dopamine to be motivated to do things? And I like the feeling of doing things. But therefore, since the only thing doing that right now is crisis, I'm going to keep jumping into crisis because that's all I know, which is giving me this dopamine release to then motivate me to do things, and then I'm actually doing them. So there's an important distinction there to understand and realize. The other thing, too, that's important to know about that distinction is that if you then start cross-addicting, let's say, to then crises, to chaos, you keep looking for these things to get this dopamine, like this surge of dopamine, you are actually going to prolong the process of your brain chemistry leveling out. So this is actually going to be counterintuitive for you, and it's going to take you even longer for that brain chemistry to then be releasing normal amounts of dopamine for everyday things, because you're not allowing it this chance to try to work and operate properly because you're still acting like an addict. All the behavior is still there. Like, this is how powerful our brain chemistry is and how powerful and important like our behavior can be, because we can literally alter and change this, which is mind-blowing. But anyway, that's for another day. So be aware of this too and understand, okay, emergencies are coming up or chaos is coming up. Am I actually addicted to that and jumping into it because I am loving this insanity? Or is it the only thing I'm finding that's giving me dopamine release to motivate me to do things? Therefore, I think I need this in order to be getting my energy up and going. So that's important to look at the difference between those two things, and then understand that if you are chasing these things now instead of whatever your addiction was, you're still acting and thinking like an addict, which therefore is then going to prolong this process of your brain needing to level out. So it's actually counterintuitive, and you could be making your early days in recovery worse or harder or longer because of doing this. Okay, so that's another important thing to know and realize about this. So yeah, it's literally just sitting in the discomfort, getting used to being a little flatter for a little bit, not being as motivated to do things, and just giving your brain a chance to level out. That's really it. It's just really hard for us. So yeah, they talk about that in the last paragraph here a bit, which I like, and kind of address this. This may be another disease that can be arrested but not cured, just like we were talking about. We arrest it by slowly adopting better work habits and paying closer attention to schedules and deadlines. Like, yes and no. Like, that's true on paper, but that's kind of the same thing as telling somebody to just let something go. Like, thanks, jackass. If it was that easy, I just would have done it. Like, so it's the addict brain. A lot of people just know this. Okay, if I have better work habits, I'm more organized, I have schedules and deadlines and stuff. I'm going to be able to accomplish things better. I'm going to be more productive. Yeah, no shit. We know that. So I actually don't think that's the thing that's going to really help you. It's not going to help directly in this sense because it's not dealing with this whole lack of motivation piece. So for me, I really would take more of the approach of acceptance around this. Acceptance, it's like radical acceptance therapy. So accepting the fact that that motivation is just going to be low and flat for a while. And then what are things you can do to help yourself sit in that discomfort and feel that and feel this low motivation for a little while until that brain starts to come back into balance. Because a lot of us will want to pay closer attention to these schedules and deadlines. We'll want to be more productive. We'll want to be motivated, and you just can't force feed it. You can't. And every time you try to, with some crises, chaos, some other substance, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. As we've established, all you're doing is just prolonging this space for your brain to level back out. So we know these things. That wouldn't be my suggestion. I'd say focus on this radical acceptance piece first, understanding this is how your brain works and how this motivation is just going to take a while to level back out, and then find things throughout the day to help fill that time, give you a little bit more comfort and self-care to sit in this so it doesn't get so unbearable where you feel you then have to use. Okay? Working with greater efficiency will have more time and energy for the things that really matter. Yep, again, we know this. We've covered this. Just going to move on here. What's our this last italicized quote? Today, I don't need a crisis to take charge of my life and do what needs to be done. I'll tackle at least one thing I've been putting off and either complete the task or get a good start on it. See, this I like more. I like that perspective in that first sentence, and then that thought, I'll tackle at least one thing I've been putting off and either complete the task or get a good start on it. So there's another kind of piece to kind of bring in here too. We're doing the acceptance work around this lack of motivation and how that's just going to take a while to get fired up and going. And also understanding that we do have the ability to push a little and force ourselves a bit, make ourselves do something. That's where then you can look at the laziness piece or not, and see if there's a little something just for today you can do to kick yourself into gear and get something going. Okay? So there we go. I'm going to wrap it up at that today. So a really interesting one today. I love these discussions. I love neuroscience. I think it's so cool. And especially just for us who have an addict brain, it's such a valuable tool for us to have and to know. So I hope you're able to just stay engaged with this one and you enjoyed it and you got something out of it, because I know I certainly did. So please throw down in the comments, what did stand out for you? What did you like about this? How do you relate with this? Would love to see those comments. And I do recovery coaching with folks. I've got a private practice. So if you are wanting some more help and understanding around what I've talked about today, please reach out. Contact info's in the description. I'd be happy to chat with you and see if there's a way that I can help you just with some of these issues in your recovery. Also in that description are other ways Spotlight Recovery can support you. So take a look there for other recovery coaching videos, our other podcast episodes, blog, a newsletter. Everything's all connected there. Those are all free resources. So take a look at those. And then ways you can support us is by donating, becoming a member, or getting yourself some branded merch. Okay, so take a look through the description for all of these things. And in the meantime, thank you for checking this out today. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Have a great day. Hopefully you can you'll get a little motivation to do what you need to do. And if not, then you can find some acceptance around the fact that it's just not going to spark today, but know that it's coming. Okay? There's your final thoughts for the day. Have a blessed 24, and we'll see you again tomorrow.